Welcome back to Out of the Ordinary. I'm Jay and I am with
Phil.
And back by popular demand. His earlier video is my #1 video by a long shot, and so I thought it'd be great to interview him again, so we will. But I'm going to start off by saying, you might be wondering why my face is super white, and that's because even though it is almost Halloween, like next week is Halloween, I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, where it happens to be like 100 degrees. So I got sunscreen on, even though I'm in the shade right now. Yeah,
Absent sunscreen.
Exactly. So we had talked a little bit about a recent article. Will you tell me what the recent article was about? Would you explain that?
Sure.
That's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I read this online. I have a subscription to The Week. I don't know if you're familiar with The Week magazine.
I'm not.
It's a weekly magazine. I get the print version. It's a great magazine. What I like is that they pull material from other news sources. So they'll pull material from the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and whatnot.
So they're an aggregator of stuff.
That's the word for it. Yes,
what's this
aggregator.
specific thing about, real quick, just so I have it in the front of the video so I can make sure they know what we're going to be talking about today?
Oh, so today, yeah, we're going to be talking about the fact that college professors have realized, or it's become more apparent in recent times, that college students today they exhibit a lack of reading stamina and endurance.
Okay,
so
said another way.
So as a result,
yeah,
they're assigning fewer books for students to read in their classes because students struggle with reading so much.
Okay, and so the basic, what we're going to be talking about then is, it seems like students today, not seems like, it is a fact that students today are not reading as much as they were in the past, and as a consequence, because it's not been working out, professors have even gone so far as making less reading,
right,
just as a part. Okay, now you were a professor for how long?
Oh, let's see, probably about 25 years altogether.
And that was
started in 1986, and my teaching career formally ended in 2011 when I moved into administration.
Okay. And it was physics and astronomy that
Physics
you taught?
and astronomy. I taught some math.
Okay, so you know.
And I taught high school too, so I taught earth science in
Okay.
high school and physical science.
So you would have a good perspective on this, in that you were a college professor for so long. What are your thoughts about this? First of all, do you think it's actually true? Is this a real thing?
Yeah, I think so, and I haven't taught in a long time, with the exception of one class that I taught 2.5 years ago, but otherwise I haven't taught since 2011. Mm-hmm. But I think this is a trend that's been ongoing for quite a while. And what's interesting is, in this article that I read, they said that they think that the reason that students lack the reading stamina and endurance, and also their vocabulary is not as good as students in the past, has a lot to do with something that happened a couple decades ago, and that is, I think it's a result of the No Child Left Behind and the Common Core. And they think the reason for that is because, and those basically go back about 2 decades, or at least No Child Left Behind goes back 2 decades. I think Common Core may be a little bit more recent. But the thing is, what they say is, because these standardized tests were employed, basically reading between the lines, it seems like what they were saying is that the teachers were teaching to the test. So teachers, they said it starts with middle school and high school. And so teachers in middle school and high school shifted from reading books, even textbooks. They shifted from covering an entire textbook to covering just portions of a textbook. And they did this to mimic the format of standardized reading comprehension tests. So with those standardized tests, the students have to read short passages and demonstrate comprehension of the material that they just read. And so I guess teachers, I'm reading into this somewhat, the article really didn't say this, but a lot of people are afraid that if their students aren't doing well, that's how their effectiveness in the classroom is measured. And so I suspect that many teachers were teaching to the test. And
sure. Just gonna jump in for just one second. I am itching. So I kind of want to even challenge their premise, if I may.
Sure.
Not that I disagree with it. I think it's definitely a fact that students are not reading nearly as much, but I would expand that to adults as well. And I wouldn't blame it on the Common Core or all those things, although those may be factors. I think it's a function of the last 10 years of society, the internet, clickbait, now it's just full bore with, I mean, I
Right.
call it TikTok-itis, right? YouTubes and YouTube Shorts and everything. I mean, I can go online right now and almost every article I want to read on Reddit, Quora, anywhere else, there's a spot, it says semicolon TLDR, which stands for too long didn't read, which means it basically gives you the Cliff's Notes version. So you can go on almost anything you want to read, even if it's only 2 pages, you can go down, or sometimes at the top and it says TLDR, too long, didn't want to read the whole thing, here's the Cliff Notes version. And so I think, although those things may be impactful, I think it's a function of this new, almost forced ADD on everybody with the shorts. You know, TikTok, bam, 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 bam. You know, 20 videos in 30 seconds. That's just my own personal thought.
No,
I have nothing to back it up. But anyway, that's it.
You read my mind, or,
okay.
or read my notes that I
crap!
took.
Sorry, buddy.
And that's the other point that they bring up in the article is they said in addition to teachers teaching differently, because they didn't say this outright, but basically teaching to the test. In addition to that, you do have the internet, you have social media, and basically, people are looking for quick fixes. They want to get the people, and this has been an issue for a long time, but I think it's becoming more prevalent nowadays. Is people just looking for instant gratification, and so you mentioned the Cliff Notes. Back in
it's the fast food of reading.
Yeah,
it seems to be, and I can acknowledge this phenomena within myself. If I go to Google News, like on my phone or whatever, and I'm reading, man, if it is not beyond captivating, I'm moving on to the next news thing. I'm hitting back and I'm going, you know what I mean? And so even though it's not TikTok, it's functionally TikTok. And so I definitely concede and agree that it's a real problem. And I think that, I don't know, I think this is going to be something that psychologists and mental health professionals are going to be reconciling with for a long time. It's a relatively new phenomena, this sort of TikTok version of life, or Cliff's Notes for the older generation version of it. What really disturbs me about it, and again, I'm watching in my own self do this, which I hate, but you very obviously miss the full context of the story.
Right, and that's the other issue they bring up is that the students, anybody who's reading these very short articles or synopsises, basically are missing the context. It's
of course.
It's what we see on the news. How often, right now, in the middle of the election, the election's a couple weeks away, and you see all these little sound bites, and they're completely taken out of context, and you don't know exactly in what context that person was making that statement and what the point was.
And even
in
addition to that, just to further, this could be like a preempt, like became before TikTok or any of these other ones. Even if you look at like the news channels, right? They've got those. I think they're called chyrons or whatever. But like, so they're talking, and then there's like a blurb. There's a blurb underneath it, and then even underneath that, there's one that's scrolling. Right. So you've got 3 things you're watching, vying for your attention, just on that, and that's nothing compared to what we have on cell phones and things now. And so, this diversion of attention, it's a very scary thing. And I think that they're going to write the books on this 10 years from now. Psychologists are going to be working upon this for a long time. And I would just say the one thing that scares me too, obviously you're missing the whole context if you read one sentence instead of 2 pages. But that in itself lends itself to a lack of critical thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
You're literally, you have a soundbite life.
Right.
And that's a problem. I agree. Concur.
And even years ago, I remember talking to people about just reading books, and someone would say, "Oh, I read this book the other day," and I said, "Wow, you read this whole book in a day?" And they said, "Well, some parts of it were kind of slow, so I skipped around," and I thought to myself, "Wow, I could never do that because I don't know what I'm missing." And even if it's just a novel, maybe it's nothing important, it's nothing earth-shattering, but you miss so much of the flavor of the novel and the richness of it if you're skipping certain parts. So I don't care.
Again,
about
it's
this.
just pure dopamine stimulus is all we're after. But I'll tell you this too. This is the other thing that sort of scares me about this whole sort of idea of what's been happening for the last, let's call it the last 10 years, definitely the last 5 or more. But it seems to me like you can like expand it to like how everybody treats each other and all these things, because what happens as a consequence of this is everybody ends up knowing very little about a whole lot.
Right.
You know what I mean? In other words, everybody is kind of they're familiar enough. What is that saying? I know enough to be dangerous.
Right.
Everybody knows enough about everything to be dangerous,
Right.
but not enough to really contextualize it and be
Right.
an authority on it. And it's rough.
That's
it's
why
tough. It's tough.
That's why the more you learn, the dumber you feel. Because the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And
That's a fact.
learning more makes you more humble.
Indeed.
You know,
That's true.
I'll be talking to people about whether it's politics or astronomy, whatever it may be. It could be a myriad of topics, and they'll have very strong opinions.
Right.
And I'll say, well, to be honest, this is what I think, but I don't really know enough to go beyond that point, or to make any stronger assertions, because I just don't feel confident, because there's a lot I don't understand about this particular topic. I haven't looked into it deeply enough.
And this is because everybody's just doing one competing soundbite against another, or one competing snippet against another. Everybody's sort of on an equal expert playing field, and so it's very contentious.
Whoever
Whoever
screams the loudest wins.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. So go ahead.
But you're right about the whole thing about short attention spans and people not being able to think critically, because if you're just reading brief summaries and not like Cliff Notes versions of very complicated issues, then you're depriving yourself of deep thinking, the deep thinking that's required to really analyze and understand complex, nuanced issues.
I work very hard at this personally to try to like relieve myself of screen time and sort of the scrolling and I mean, like, it's like I'm very conscious of it and I work it. That said, I struggle with it still mightily. Like, if I'm watching a show, it doesn't even have to be, if it's a commercial, for sure I've grabbed my phone already, right? But if it's not, but even if the show I'm watching, I'm interested in, the moment it becomes even a tiny bit less engaging, I've reached for my phone to do both things at one time. It's a big problem, and I'm far from the only one that's like this. You know, in fact, I'd argue I'm doing better than a whole lot of people in this realm, and I consider it a problem for me. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so that is definitely an issue. What else did you have on your notes there? Did you have some other notes there?
Let's see here. I can't think of anything offhand that I wanted to bring up.
Okay, so I had one thing that I wanted to
Sure.
bring up. You had wrote a book a while back, and I know this is kind of, but it's kind of related, is it not? Isn't it related to students?
I didn't write a book. I wrote I don't even know if you want to call it a manuscript. Certainly was never published.
Oh, okay. Well, what was it? What did you write?
I wrote.
Is related to this, first of all.
Yeah, well, it arose out of my teaching experience, and it was basically a pamphlet, or more than a pamphlet, but a guide to strategies to being successful in college, or for that matter in school, period. It would work for high school students too, and I wrote specifically for high school students and college students.
We'll table that one for another video, but what we'll use that in this context for this video is read all your stuff all the way through. It'll help you in college.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
I will say that I did write an article on this, actually, mainly for my friends and family, talking about the screens and basically that it's creating sort of an attention disorder in all of us. And I'm going to actually post that below this video if anybody wants to read it. It's pretty short. It's maybe like a page or two. I won't include a TLDR because that would kind of defeat the purpose here. Right. So, but anyways,
we're trying to discourage that.
Exactly. But if anybody wants to read more on this, or have more of my opinions on this and why I think it's an epidemic that's worth figuring out and solving, I'll post that below. And Professor Phil, thank you very much for your time in the subject. This was great. Well, appreciate it.
Enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.